Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to give it a couple more minutes while we wait for everyone else to join. So we'll get started in just a minute or two. Hello again. We've got a few people that are having a hard time getting on, so I'm hoping we're just waiting a couple more minutes to hopefully they can get in. All right. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, Chris, good. I'm glad you made it in. I know there are a couple people that were having a hard time with that link. So hopefully
Yeah,
I've got.
it kept saying wait, they were waiting to let you in. So
Oh, weird. Yeah, I don't know. Let me turn it there. Can you hear me okay? Okay, awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, now I can't see you anymore, so we're gonna get through this together. All right, so welcome to the Library Media Work Group. We appreciate your commitment and your dedication to this work. Thank you so much for being here. A few housekeeping requests. We do have members of the public on this call. Unless you're a work group member, please keep yourself on mute until the end of the meeting. At that time, there will be an opportunity for you to type your comments into the chat and we will read those. I will read those out loud.
Amber, I have a quick question. In general, do you want us to use the chat box if we have questions, or do you want us to unmute the work members?
Work group members, you can feel free to unmute if you have questions. Since this is our first meeting, we're going to go over some quick introductions. My name is Amber Bombach, and I'm the Director of Library Media and Instructional Materials with the Florida Department of Education. Work group members, at this time, I'll take a quick attendance. I can't see you, so I'm going to just go ahead and call you based on the list that I have in front of me. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and state your title and district and any other info that you'd like to share. Eventually, other work group members, such as parents, may be joining us at a later meeting. We look forward to welcoming those members when they come. Let's see, so starting alphabetical order, Terry Adams, are you here? No, okay. Tasha Bates. Not yet. Christy Humberger.
I'm here. I am with Collier County Public Schools. I am the elementary lead media specialist, and I work in an elementary school that serves students from 3 years old through 5th grade.
Awesome, thank you. Michelle Jarrett.
I am here. I am from Osceola County, and I am the library supervisor.
Awesome, thanks, Michelle. And Lori Pick. And how about Christine Smith?
I am here. I am the Volusia County Library Media and Instructional Materials Specialist. It's quite the long name. Tasha Bates is using the chat box because she can't unmute. She is here, and she is from Okaloosa County. I am not sure what her title is, but Tasha is here. She's just on the chat box.
Gotcha. Thank you for letting me know. Again, I can't see the chat, so if something exciting is happening, please let me know. Okay, let's see. And Ruth Witter.
Hi, yes, Ruth Witter, Santa Rosa County. Work at the district office, library media services.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
And Amelia Zukowski.
Hi, I'm Amelia Zukowski. I'm the program specialist for instructional media in St. Johns County School District. I am not able to turn my camera on, but I can unmute.
That's great. All right. It sounds like most of us are here. We'll go ahead and move on.
Lori Pick is here. Oh,
Lori Pick is in the chat. Okay, perfect. Good, good, good. Okay. All right, so the third item on our agenda for today is purpose. Why are we here? So House Bill 1467, which is the reason that we're all here today, amends section 1006.29, paren 6, to read, the department shall develop an online training program for school librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection and maintenance of library media and collections or materials maintained on a reading list. This training must assist reviewers in complying with the requirements of S 1006.31, paren 2. The department shall make this training available no later than January 1st, 2023. No later than July 1st, 2023, and annually thereafter, each superintendent must certify to the department that all school librarians and media specialists employed by the district have completed the online training program. And the citation for that is section 1006.29 paren 6. So as we build this training, there are other parts of the legislation that we need to keep in mind and reference as we do this work. I'll be sharing with you the various statutes that apply to our task, as this will create the shell or the outline of the work that we are tasked with completing. So I apologize, this meeting is going to be a lot of me speaking to you, and after this, it'll be a lot more discussion as we build the training. So once the training is complete, it's important to note that 1006.28 paren 2 paren D requires, beginning January 1st, 2023, school librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection of school district library materials must complete the training program developed pursuant to S.1006.29 paren 6 before reviewing and selecting age-appropriate materials and library resources. Once again, we're building this training because the people that are mentioned on the slide need to take the training. As we work together, please remember that your input helps to inform the commissioner's decision on the training that will be eventually adopted by the State Board of Education. So there's two main purposes for this training and for the work group. The first one is training for library media specialists for the selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists. And the second big portion is training to assist reviewers of instructional materials. So diving into the first category, training for library media specialists for the selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists. It states that these materials must be free of pornography and material prohibited under 847.012 Florida statute. The materials need to be suited to student needs and ability to comprehend material, and materials must be appropriate to grade level and age group for which materials are used or available, and the citations in statute are below there. Other considerations under training for library media specialists for the selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists include developing collections requires consultations of school community stakeholders and professionally recognized reviewing periodicals. Collections based on reader interests, the support of academic standards, alignment with curriculum, and academic needs of students and faculty, and they must provide for regular removal based on factors such as physical condition, rate of circulation, alignment to standards, and out-of-date content. The second purpose of this training will be to assist reviewers of instructional materials to help them meet the standards for instructional materials found in 1006.31 paren 2. All materials recommended by reviewers must be to the satisfaction of each reviewer that materials are free of pornography and material prohibited under S.847.012, suited to student needs and ability to comprehend, and they must be accurate, objective, balanced, and non-inflammatory. Continuing with the training to assist reviewers of instructional materials when recommending instructional materials, each reviewer must A, include only instructional materials that accurately portray the ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, physical, and racial diversity of our society, including men and women in professional, career, and executive roles, and the role and contributions of the entrepreneur and labor in the total development of this state and the United States. B, include only materials that accurately portray, whenever appropriate, humankind's place in ecological systems including the necessity for the protection of our environment and conservation of our natural resources, and the effects on the human system of the use of tobacco, alcohol, controlled substances, and other dangerous substances. B, include materials that encourage thrift, fire prevention, and humane treatment of people and animals. And D, require, when appropriate, to the comprehension of students that materials for social science, history, or civics classes contain the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. A reviewer may not recommend any instructional materials that contain any matter reflecting unfairly upon persons because of their race, color, creed, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, or occupation, or otherwise contradict the principles enumerated under section 1003.42 paren 3. Instructional materials reviewers cannot recommend materials that contradict the principles of individual freedom. Those principles are: the legislature acknowledges the fundamental truth that all persons are equal before the law and have inalienable rights. Accordingly, instruction and supporting materials on the topics enumerated in this section must be consistent with the following principles of individual freedom. A, no person is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously, solely by virtue of his or her race or sex. B, no race is inherently superior to another race. C, no person should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, disability, or sex. D, meritocracy or traits such as hard work ethic are not racist, but fundamental to the right to pursue happiness and be rewarded for industry. E, a person, by virtue of his or her race or sex, does not bear responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. And F, a person should not be instructed that he or she must feel guilt, anguish, or other forms of psychological distress for actions in which he or she played no part committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. And that is section 1003.42 paren 3 in Florida statute. Okay, so to summarize all of the statutes that were previously mentioned, our task for this training is to create a training for school librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection of school district library materials that focuses on each material must be selected by a school district employee that holds a valid educational media specialist certificate. Selection and maintenance of library media materials and those found on reading lists. Procedures for developing library media collections, and the procedures must be posted on the school website. Book selections must meet the criteria in section 1006.40 paren 3 paren D, which is the one that states that they must be free of pornography and other materials that are prohibited, suited to student needs and comprehension, and appropriate for grade level and age group for which the materials are used or made available. Selections require consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. They must provide for library media center collections based on reader interest, support of state academic standards and aligned curriculum, and the academic needs of students and faculty. They must provide for the regular removal or discontinuance of books based on, at a minimum, physical condition, rate of recent circulation, alignment to state academic standards, and relevancy to curriculum, out-of-date content, and required removal pursuant to subparagraph A2. The training must assist instructional materials reviewers in complying with the requirements of section 1006.31 paren 2, which means they must be accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, current, free of pornography, accurately portray the ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, physical, and racial diversity of our society, and they may not contain any matter reflecting unfairly upon persons because of their race, color, creed, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, or occupation, or otherwise contradict the principles enumerated under section 1003.42 paren 3. Okay, so we will continue to reference this summary as we build the training. All right, way of work. So this is the section we're going to talk about how we're going to get all of this done. In statute, the deadline to have this training available to districts is January 1st. That means we need to have the training completed by the work group as of November 8th, as it will need to be approved by leadership, and that'll take some time. This may require us to do some individual work between our weekly meetings in order to meet this deadline. Members of the public that are here listening today, if you would like to make a public comment at the end of the presentation, you can go ahead and type it into the chat as we're discussing these topics. We'll save time at the end to read the comments out loud. So that was a lot of me reading for today. We're going to go ahead and focus on the first couple of bullet points of our task. The first bullet is each material must be selected by a school district employee that holds a valid educational media specialist certificate. Work group members, is there any discussion that needs to be had about that bullet point in terms of creating a training, or is there any other questions? I should have paused earlier and asked for questions. Any other questions that you have about everything that I've mentioned thus far?
In terms of, this is Michelle Jarrett, in terms of that verification for the school district employee holding that educational media specialist certification, is there any verification that's going to happen? And I ask that question because I know that there are school districts that do not have a media specialist at every school, and they instead have paraprofessionals that are running school libraries. So how are we verifying that those purchases are in fact being made by someone with media specialist certification?
So in order to get a media specialist certification, if a district doesn't currently have a media specialist, all that needs to be done to add that certification is to take the educational media specialist court test, and then they can add it to their certificate. And that's, one pretty easy way of complying with that part of the rule.
Sure, but if there's a school that doesn't have a media specialist at all, and they're running their libraries with paraprofessionals, how are we in fact ensuring that each school is having a collection maintained by a certified library media specialist?
I'm going to mute for 1 second and confer with my colleagues. Hang on. All right, thank you for that question, Michelle. So in statute, it does say that school principals are responsible for ensuring compliance with the law. So it will be up to the school principals to ensure that somebody in the district or in the school has that educator media certificate as part of their certification. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go back to I have to go back to when I'm sharing my screen. I cannot see any of you and I can't mute myself, so it takes me a minute. There we go. Okay. So any other discussion around holding a valid educational media specialist certificate? Okay. The next bullet is the selection and maintenance of library media materials and those found on reading lists. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up to you. What work group members, what policies do you have in place for the selection of materials?
In Collier County, we have the procedures that we need to look for the editorial reviews on the books that we are considering. We spend a lot of time talking with each other about materials that we would like to bring into our schools, and also looking at the age level and the appropriateness of it. But mostly it is looking at those editorial reviews and, reading other things from librarians around the country.
Okay. And do you have those written out somewhere? Would you be able to share those perhaps with the work group so that I think I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel is what I'm trying to say. Like, I know a lot of you have some really great policies. I've seen some of them from some of your districts. Perhaps we can use some of those to kind of start that work if we have, go ahead.
Would you like me to send them to you, Amber, and you can forward them on then?
That would be fine, yeah. And that's something that we can do over email, after the meeting throughout the week, and start talking about it that way as well. But I think our goal today is just to start talking about these things, talk about any issues that, we think we're going to need to address in this training, anything like the point that Michelle brought up, anything that comes up that you think of, and then we can start working on the documents over email, and then perhaps bring them to the meetings as well next time.
So we have a fillable, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I put in the chat box what a kind of a synopsis of what the training that we've been doing at our county. I mean, we go into great detail with our county people, but the basic overview, which is heavily based on what state statute says as well. So I don't know if you Amber, I guess you can't see the chat box. So
yeah, I'm gonna close this screen if you don't mind.
Well, and while you're doing that, it's curriculum knowledge, requests of faculty and students, interests of students, highly reviewed lists, and it kind of goes on about examples, updated and current information and materials from reputable, unbiased, and professionally prepared selections are given strong consideration. And then we do some things with our advisory committee as well.
And then we have a written collection development plan that has we have a specific template that the entire district follows. So it's a fillable form that everyone does so that it's uniform throughout the district. And then that's placed on every district's website, which has actually been in place for every school's website. That's been in place for a while. But I think that might be helpful. While every district does it differently, I think that there are certain pieces that should be in every collection development plan that would be set across the state that would, be uniform, so that community members across the state would know what to look for when they're looking at what is included in every collection or in every collection plan that states how and why you're going to purchase what you purchase, and then where those items would come from.
I have to agree. I think that these are best practices in library studies. This is not something that is brand new to the practice of being a librarian. We have to use these practices in order to cultivate good collections. So by using our unbiased reviews, using the professional resources, going through a collection development plan that's 3 to 5 years, and then having them reviewed, and that element of the media advisory committee going through them now just adds that next layer of community input. This is all something like that's a new level of um, um, review process. This is very similar to what we're doing in our district as well. So I did add that into the chat too. But this process of what's Chris listed in those first couple of bullets, 1, 2, and 3, that was done prior to this. So I just want to put that out there.
I really like the fact that you're using the school media advisory committee to look at your purchases instead of waiting until there might be a situation with a parent. So it's being very proactive using that committee.
Well, and the cabinet actually requested that I do this, and it was because if there was a question, they wanted to be able to tell people this was looked at by multiple eyes, and it was a part of what the community of the school wanted. It doesn't mean it needs to be a unanimous decision, but it does need to be, and our committee does include a parent who's not a faculty member on there. That is a priority for that group as well. So, and I see the biggest benefit of this training, especially for our small counties who do not have a librarian backed person heading up the helm in their counties, because we've got lots of smaller counties who may or may not have a solid training, and this will really help those smaller counties. So I'm excited that we can do this for our counties.
Oops. Chris, that does bring up the concern when we talk about those smaller counties that don't necessarily have a library media specialist with media specialist certification at every school. How do we make sure those best practices are followed so that there is a collection development plan in place for every building? Because there shouldn't be the same collection development plan for every school, because every school is unique based on the students and the community that they serve. So making sure that those are followed at the school level, I think it's just going to be important that we state that in the training.
Are we going to need to be submitting who are the purchases? Sorry, I'm at a middle school. You can hear the bell. Are we going to be submitting who took the training to the state and who are responsible for purchasing for the different buildings, Amber? Is that one of the ways that we're going to be figuring out who's doing what?
Again, the principals are responsible for ensuring compliance. And then I don't think that we're looking it up. Hang on. Yeah, there's a lot of little pieces to a lot of this bill that, need further clarification that aren't, so that's part of our job, is trying to figure out, exactly what needs to be included in the training and what doesn't, and what all the little moving parts, where they go.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Because Michelle asked about the certification and you said it would be up to the principal. Is this the principal being ensuring that someone within the building is holding the certification? So it doesn't have to be someone it can be anyone in the building holding the certification.
Correct. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify. So they're saying that there needs to be a certified person at every campus.
Want me to? Okay, so sorry about that pause. I was getting help with the statute. So in the statute, it says each book made available to students through a school district library media center or included in a recommended or assigned school or grade level reading list must be selected by a school district's employee who holds a valid educational media specialist certificate. So the person who is selecting the books needs to have that certificate. And it says regardless of whether the book is purchased, donated, or otherwise made available to students. Does that help clear it up?
Yes, I'm one of the districts that we have a lot of aides in our media center. So that, yes. Okay.
So then would that person then be responsible for writing the collection development plan for each individual school? Because that plan has to be posted on each school's website?
I would think so, but again, that would probably be up to the principal to decide who's actually doing that work. That part is not in statute as far as who's writing the collection policy. That's not outlined in statute.
It just says there has to be one, right?
There has to be one, and they are the person that's involved in selecting. So I imagine they would be very involved in that process. But it's not clearly defined.
Thank you, Amber.
Do we have any districts who have collection development at a district level, similar to what the public libraries do many times, where they have one group? Are there any, do any of you do that, where you purchase for your entire district? Michelle, do you not purchase, your individual schools do? Okay.
Amber, can I ask a question that, like, just kind of looking at it, kind of made me think of like the purchase part of selecting criteria. So like there's nowhere in the bill that really tells you, it says to get input from, you know, your committee or your public for each selection, but it doesn't really clarify before purchase. So I mean, can it be, I just want to kind of clarify that it's maybe before adding to the collection, if that makes sense, because here's why, and all of the librarians can attest to this. When you're ordering books from a vendor, they take a very long time to come in. And so like if you're having your library committee meetings or however you get your input from your public, if you have that list already, you have it before it comes in to present to the committee before it comes in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as long as you know the title and the author and that book can start, you could start exploring that book, reading reviews, you know, doing all the things that the committee is going to need to do in order to select or to approve.
Okay, I feel like it would be beneficial to add that because I feel like that's been a kind of like a point of confusion. I don't know if others agree, but I know I hear over and over again, like before purchase, before purchase, before purchase, but it really is asking before added to the collection or before
being made available to students.
Correct. So I think I think it would be, I mean, in some districts are going to do that different. Some may want to have that done before. Especially like if you're a bigger district or everybody's going to do things differently, but you know, I know for here, like we're a smaller district, we have 35 schools and our books take a very long time to come in and it's very, you know, manageable. And most of our librarians are very proficient at collection development. So I feel really good about them going ahead and placing their order. You making the decision, with their committee and having an option. I've talked to our vendors and stuff that we use too about options for that. So just throwing that out there.
Well,
I think that's
and
valid.
I've got another piece for the training too, for the subscription services, because you do not see. So what I've been talking to JLG, and what we've worked out is they send everything unattached processing, and then they can turn it back if it doesn't meet the needs of the school and the committee. And so that's how because a lot of I never was a JLG user because I always like to pick my own books, but a lot of people love it and they have a great selection. So in talking with JLG, the solution is that they send it unattached. That way you can send it back, because as soon as they attach it, you've paid for it because of the attachment. But I've worked that out for Volusia County. That's probably something that they do for the state, and probably in that training needs to be something that's shared for those schools who do subscription situations, that you figured out a way to be able to send something back without losing money.
So you're saying that JLG is allowing you to more or less preview the material. So they send you your box and then you can preview it and accept it or send it back with no charge.
Basically,
Okay.
theoretically, you can go in there 1 month in advance and like swap things out. But the reality is it's just like CD of the month way back. Well, actually, I was cassette of the month way back when. Remembering to do it every month didn't always happen. And so what happens when you forget to do it and the books arrive and there was a book in there that you would not have chosen? And so that's the solution that we came up with JLG, because they're not wanting to work too many months in advance.
That makes sense.
And that's a great strategy for a committee too, though, Chris, because like if you have that box, you can take that to your committee, and you can give them the opportunity to kind of put their hands on the book and look at them and see, and then they're going to be more familiar and be able to make a better decision. So, and then you can explain to them how they're chosen by those review journals and those sources already, so I think that's a great thing.
All right. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and move to, we talked about selection. The next bullet point on there was maintenance. What do you have for maintenance of materials, or what policies or procedures do you already have in place?
Musty?
Yeah, I was just going to say musty too. That's our policy as well. I had a big sign behind my door, but you can't see it, musty. It's in our media handbook as well.
Okay, so you have something written out that describes what you do to maintain, based on age or all the things that we mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint. Okay.
I think there's a different acronym group too. I can't remember what it is offhand. Didn't Texas do something, or is that musty? There's another set of stuff as well.
Like I do have one.
Okay, how about reading lists? This is kind of maybe a new one for us, I know. Do you have any policies written out about reading lists?
Well, can I ask a clarifying question for that? Because I must admit, I do not understand what you mean. By reading list, are you talking back to the old adage of when a rising ninth grader was come in, before you come to school, you must read one of these 5 books? Or are you talking about our famed state lists that are optional, that you don't really need to read it, but here's a great list of new books. So I am flat out confused what you mean by that. I took it as reading list as these are the 5 books that everybody must read, but if that's not really what we're talking about, I think I'd like some clarification, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna mute for just a second. Hang on 1 minute while we figure that out. All right, thank you for that comment. I knew that was coming, and to be frank, we are confused about the reading list portion as well. So we're all laughing in the room because it's been very confusing for us to trying to figure out what exactly is meant by that. So you are definitely not alone. We do have a rule that's working its way through the process that's trying to help clarify or define exactly what a reading list is. So once we have that in place, that we'll be able to, infuse the training with whatever that definition ends up being. However, in statute, it does currently say recommended or assigned reading list. So I would assume that's not your SSYRA lists, as those are optional lists. I think it would be like, all ninth graders must read 3 of these books on this list. Those kinds of lists is what we're assuming that to mean.
And the message we continue to send from a FAME perspective is that FAME's list is a free choice reading list designed for kids to find 3 books that they want to read for self-selected reading, meant to be reading motivation. It is not curriculum related at all. And I would think for this purchase or this purpose, and then I have actually gone through all of the Senate debate and all of the House debate and made multiple, I wrote everything down and time-stamped it as we were trying to figure it out in our district in regards to this bill and some other bills when we're talking about instruction versus self-selected reading. And, in talking intent, and I know we can't read intent into the bill, we have to look at what the bill says, but I do believe that it was meant, we do have to define self-selected reading versus instruction. And I think that those reading lists are required reading versus self-selected reading for library purposes, in my opinion. And I'm obviously going to take my direction from the DOE. But that was kind of how we've been interpreting it on our end.
Mm-hmm.
And along that route, so are we going to be training our people, like what is their role on the campus? And this is primarily a secondary question when you are working with AP, language arts, people, I'm trying to field questions and I don't understand, like when I'm working with IB Lang, like do the media specialists need to approve a list that comes from the language arts program that comes from the IB? I'm glad to have our FAME list checked off. That's nice. But for the other pieces of it, what?
Yeah.
I think it's not as involved as you may be thinking. And I think it really is more of like, there's a program called One Book, One School or something like that. And the entire school, usually elementary, will, read the same book. Like something like that would need to be approved by the person holding that certification, the media specialist certification. Something like, all ninth graders have to read these 3 books this year. Something like that would have to be approved. So it's just your mandatory, your required reading. It's not going to be the list that the media specialist says, hey, here's 10 books about dogs that you may like. That's not going to be part of, that's optional. It's not recommended, it's not required, it's fun, optional.
So that's so when we're working at the training, we probably want to have a section then of this is not. We need to have examples of what is and what's not, because it needs to be very clear. Oh, can I admit Christy Hamburger? She's trying to get in. So I'm still unsure as to the upper end English question though, as far as what our role. So if we do need to figure that one out for those books where an English teacher's needing to read it, how much is supposed to go through the media specialist for those academic curriculum courses? And then what is the process to let parents know as well? That's what my people are asking me. It's not the little people books, it's the older people books.
Gotcha.
Okay, then I have
I'm writing.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say I'm writing some of these questions down because I don't know the answers, but hopefully we can work through it and come up with something.
So like for the reading list part, like this may be like a silly question, but does one book constitute a list? So just for example, like if all of 9th grade had to read a book, I can understand how the librarian would have to approve that. Or let's go back down to 5th grade because we're talking about elementary list. Does that one book have to be posted on a list and then published on the website? If it was elementary, because elementary required lists are required to be published. What if it's just one and not like 2 or more?
I would assume yes, because it's required, because we're requiring. Hang on
I
one
think it's just
second.
hard because it's a list. And I think of a list being like a list of more than one. You know what I mean?
But then it says like all grade required reading, which is like, I got a
This-
call from FAME
Yeah.
last year because a whole grade level was reading Black Brother. And like, I was like, that's a curriculum question. Don't call me.
Yeah, I understand the part of the librarian having to read it, but when it says the reading list part as far as publishing it on their website, like I understand like having to, like somebody having to approve it for like 5th grade to read
Sure.
the book, but I'm thinking in terms of like it having to be published. I mean, when in doubt, visibility, put it on there, but you know, that it just that's the kind of questions that I've been getting from like administrators. Like we understand if it's like one book, one school or something like that, they're, you know, you're sending notifications, parents are aware, you're putting that on your website anyway, so it's very visible, you know, but as far as it being posted as a list. And then I think I don't know, this may not be the right venue to ask, but it's in terms of reading lists, you know, I think somebody brought up in something before, you know, like on Destiny where there's the part where you can do like the, you know, the resource list and stuff like that too. Like if people could put their required list there. That was in something that I was in like 2 weeks ago. It's online.
Okay, I don't quite have an answer for you about the one
Okay.
book question. We'll have to get back to that. But we've got about 5 minutes left. So that was actually that covered that second bullet point. I know we're gonna have to talk a lot more about that, and maybe we can continue to do that over email this week. I also wanted to make sure to give time to, I'm not gonna go back to the PowerPoint because there's only a couple slides left and it's not all that interesting to look at. But our next few meetings, the next one is September 27th from 1 to 2 p.m. And work group members, you should have that. I think you all responded to all of them. The one after that is October 4th, so it's going to be on Tuesdays, 1 to 2, and then October 11th from 1 to 2. And we will hold more meetings as necessary. I may, because there's all these time deadlines and things that I need to do to publicly notice a meeting. So I may need to publicly notice the next couple meetings coming up towards the end of October pretty soon here. And then we're going to go ahead and, oh yes, please send in any procedures, policies that we talked about for the maintenance selection. If you have anything on reading lists, go ahead and send that in to me. We'll figure out a way that we can all look at those together.
Amber, can you send an email out that we can just all respond back to the email with that? Okay, thank you.
I'll do that right after this meeting. Yes, thank you. That's a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and open up the meeting for any comments from the public. And I don't think that you can unmute yourselves, unfortunately, but if you would like, please go ahead and chat into or type into the chat any comments or questions that you have. And Terry, I apologize. I'm not sure why it didn't allow you in as a member of the work group, but I will work on that for next time. And I don't really see, okay, I don't see anything coming up in the chat. So I think that we are good to go ahead and end the meeting. Our next meeting will be next week on September 27th, and we'll be discussing the next few bullets of that summary. I'll send those to you so you know what's coming up, so we can be prepared for, what we're going to talk about. If you need to get a hold of me, you all have my email address and my phone number. Please reach out. This is my primary focus for the next 6 weeks. We only have until really like beginning-ish of November 8th is what I put on that timeline. And this is a huge task. I mean, you saw how many bullet points we had on, on that summary. So this is my primary focus for sure, is getting this done. So please don't hesitate to call or email me with anything you've got, and we will talk about it.
Can I say one thing, Amber? This
yes.
is Michelle. I'm sorry. So
Okay.
a lot of the conversation comes around the statute lawyer definition of 847.012 of pornography and harmful to minors. Is there any chance we can get some sort of attorney recommendation or some sort, because a lot of people will bring in the PICO case, and then other people will say in the 11th Circuit, a PICO is not going to matter. So in defining that, there's a lot of discussion about what is going to matter, and in terms of pornography or in terms of how that it has a different meaning, because whether it's prurient, whether it's, all of these things, but then also the part in the statute where it says when read in its entirety, or when taken as a whole, is part of the statute. And so I would feel comfortable if we had some sort of attorney recommendation or input as we're creating this, to back us up a little bit, because I know my interpretation of that. But I want to make sure that we are, following the intent of the law in that, because that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
In complaints and in discussion. So if we are
Absolutely.
following that, that would be awesome, that everyone was hearing that same thing.
Yes, and I can follow up with our legal team and see if we can get some feedback on that.
And if the rest of you don't agree with that, that's fine. You could tell me that, no, we're fine, Michelle.
No, I agree 100%, because I think that is a valid point to bring up, especially when we go through selection, and then when we have our media advisory committees looking at materials and then requesting reconsideration for materials as well, because that is part of the process for selection and deselection of materials, and it is part of collection development, and that's essential in what we do in our profession. So
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll follow up with that for sure next time. All right, anything else in closing? Okay, well, thank you so very much. I truly appreciate all of you so much for taking an hour out of your very, very busy days to be here to create this training for the entire state. So it is a really big deal, and we really appreciate you. I really appreciate you. So
we appreciate
thank you very
Amber.
much. Thank you. And call or email me anytime. I'll see you next week.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Bye now.
Looking forward.
Thank you.